What's up, guys? Jason up the New 80s Revolution down here in the cave once again for your viewing pleasure. What's up, everybody? It's been a long time. If you think 2 weeks is a long time, well, I do. I think that's a very long time in between videos, but hopefully we'll change that going into the new year here. Last video I did was my top 10 LJN figures, and by that I mean the top 10 figures that I played with the most as a kid. Well, it's only fitting to do the bottom 10 LJN figures. These are not the 10 worst looking figures. These are the 10 figures, actually it's 9. I really couldn't come up with a 10th. So the 9 least played with figures in my childhood LJN Wrestling Federation coming up tonight. But first, as we always do, we just chit-chat a little bit before we get on with the show. The next thing I'm going to do is probably the shelf by shelf room tour. I've done a couple of different full room tours where I show you everything I have, or I kind of walk you through the room. But what I want to do is I want to literally show you everything I have. So I'm going to go shelf by shelf. And I'm going to take my time with that. Like I literally want to pull everything off the shelf and show you exactly what I have, so you know everything that's in my collection. The other room tours, we would just kind of, we'd look at the shelf, we'd move on, you'd see some things, maybe you miss some things behind, something else. Maybe there was something little that I just ignored and didn't show you. But what I want to do is really go shelf by shelf. And that's going to be probably like a 10, 12, 15 part series. I'm going to do one shelf at a time, one shelf per video. And it's probably going to be a good half hour or more for the video. So that is some ongoing content to look forward to. Shelf by shelf review. And by review, I mean, backstory. Why do I have this? Did I have it when I was a kid? What does it mean to me? How did I acquire it? Is it something that I'm going to continue building off of? Is it a growing collection? Is it a completed collection? Maybe there's some items in here that are like, one and done. I got one and I don't need any more. So we're going to do that. We're going to go through the entire room, literally the entire room from top to bottom. When that 10 or 15 part series is over, you will know everything I have in this room. What else? Christmas, we did the Christmas pickups video. Christmas was good. I am not prepared right now to say hello to anybody in particular. I do want to have, maybe the intro to the room tour video series. I would like to take maybe 10 minutes to just kind of talk to some people specifically on here, just do some shout outs and say hello to a few people who, have, been more of a friendship throughout this YouTube adventure. There's a handful of you out there that I, correspond with regularly, and I wanted to say hello to a few folks, some new folks, some old folks. So we'll be doing that next. Now, I know all of you are wondering, where in the world is PACW? Well, all right, here's where I'm at with that. I want it to be great, and so I'm playing around with some angles, is the camera going to be above the ring looking in? Is the camera going to be off to the side? How much of my hands are you going to see? I'm trying to figure that out to where it looks right. And I'm also figuring out how I'm going to do the commentary part for that. So what I think I'm going to do is record the match and then commentate over the match. So, go back in and post-record commentary, I guess. That way I can concentrate on what I'm doing, and then I can go back and really have fun with the commentary, and just put that audio track over the action. But I got to figure out how to do that. I'm not the editing master. So I mean, it still exists. It's coming. I know I really teased you guys with the whole idea, but the only reason it doesn't exist right now is because I'm not happy with the way it looks. I want it to be good. I can't say perfect because I'm not going to make anything perfect with my video making skills, but I want it to be good. I want it to be something that that gets you guys interested and keeps your interest, and I keep it going on the channel. But so we'll get there. But definitely some fun stuff to see. Got a lot of shows coming up. I'm so excited. Once Christmas crash ended and I climbed out of that funk, I started looking forward to the Comic-Con season. Niagara Falls Comic-Con is coming. I can't wait. I will be there for 2 straight days. Nickel City Con in Buffalo is coming, and they are bringing in a Friday the 13th. They're bringing in C.J. Graham, who played Jason in one of the movies. A little side adventure of mine, a side mission, is to collect as many autographs from each person who played Jason in Friday the 13th, and I want to get them on an individual mask, and so I'd like to have a collection of masks by the time this con season is over. So Nickel City Con in Buffalo, Niagara Falls Comic-Con, and then maybe something in Albany as well. Empire State Comic-Con, I believe it's called. But anyway, let's get into the LJNs. This is the bottom 9 LJN figures. This is the least played with figures of my childhood. Now, I did not count some of the more obvious figures because I didn't have them as a kid. For example, Rick Rude. What a terrible figure, right? I didn't count him because I didn't have him as a kid. I didn't have Rick Rude in my prime playing age or era, right? So some of those later figures you're not going to see. But let's jump right into it, shall we? There's certain play poses that, for me, kind of eliminate the figure. And this particular pose eliminates the figure for the most part. Now, King Kong Bundy has this same pose, and I played with him a lot as a kid, but George the Animal Steel never got any play time in my LJN Federation. I can't say exclusively for the pose because Bundy got a lot of action, but just the character. George the Animal Steel matches are not fun to watch, or not. I guess they're fun to watch. They're not good. George the Animal Steel's not a good wrestler. He's a sideshow. He's a character. So you don't get a good match out of George the Animal Steel, and it carried over into the play. I mean, I had nothing to do in my federation with George Steele, so this figure rarely got played with, if ever, when I was a kid. Good figure, looks like a great figure. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's just I had no idea what to do with George the Animal Steel. Some of you guys are going to be surprised by some of these, I think. Jimmy Snuka, one of my favorite figures, overall. I mean, I love the first 5 figures. They just, there's nothing more special than the first 5 LJN. So Jimmy Snuka is obviously one of them. It's a great figure. It's a perfect size. It's perfect, it's a great figure. Jimmy Snuka really, well, first of all, he was out of the WWF by the time his figure came out. And I didn't use him much. I didn't have much use for Jimmy Snuka in my federation. I guess because he wasn't in the WWF at the time, I wasn't exposed to him. I mostly remember Snuka from after he left. So after he left the WWF, because I started watching. I started watching early to mid '84, and he was doing his thing with Piper, and then after WrestleMania he was pretty much gone. So a lot of the Snuka matches that I've seen have been, were on tape, where it was old footage. So I wasn't super familiar with him, other than the WrestleMania and the feud with Piper. So I didn't use him. I didn't use Jimmy Snuka much. Again, great figure, one of my favorites, but did not get a lot of action in my federation. Hillbilly Jim was not used at all when I was a kid. No main reason other than I thought the character was goofy, and I couldn't do much with him when I was a kid. I do remember here's kind of a strange story that I'm remembering. WrestleMania 5, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Mega Powers explode, right? When I was watching wrestling, I would usually bust out the LJNs and play along with what I was watching. But I didn't want to do that for WrestleMania, of course. I needed to focus on WrestleMania. So after WrestleMania, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I was still in the mindset of somebody turning on Hogan, because it was Hogan versus Savage. So for one night only, no storyline, out of the blue, Hillbilly Jim was a bad guy, and I had a match with him and Hulk Hogan on the night of WrestleMania 5. But other than that, Hillbilly Jim got very little play in my federation. Very, very little. Maybe beaten up by somebody like Stud or Bundy, but other than that, no real run, no real success. Hillbilly Jim was rarely played with by me as a kid. This might surprise you. Andre the Giant. I love this figure because it's one of the first 5. I don't like this figure because of the way it looks. I think the short-haired Andre, the second Andre, and of course the black card Andre are so much better. This head and this hair mold drove me nuts even as a kid. It's just so odd and bulky. And I never used Andre, ever, as a kid. Short-haired Andre probably got a little bit more play, but I really didn't know how to use Andre as a good guy in my play. I don't remember if when he turned bad in '87, if I used him as a bad guy. I'm pretty sure he probably got a little bit of bad guy action around WrestleMania 3. I'm sure I had some Hogan Andre matches. But as a good guy, 85, 86, the LJN play years of 85 and 86, Andre was never used. I never used Andre. This one, and my opinions of this guy, will surprise many of you. I'm sure some of you will unsubscribe to the channel and no longer mention the words New 80s Revolution ever again. But Rowdy Roddy Piper. I never, ever used him as a kid. Never. And on top of that, my opinion, nowhere near as great as everybody says. Roddy Piper annoyed the pants off of me with his... I know that everybody says that he's the promo king, that he's the greatest talker of all time. Go back and listen to some of the stuff that this guy's saying. You don't have a clue what he's even talking about. He's rattling on. He's making all kinds of noises. He's just kind of huffing and puffing. He never really says anything. Piper's Pit was awesome. I loved Piper's Pit. Now, how can that be? He's talking. I loved how he egged on the good guys and made the good guys absolutely want to choke him, to rip his head off. Was he a great bad guy? One of the best bad guys of all time, if not the greatest bad guy of all time. But he annoyed me to death. I did not like Roddy Piper. I just, even as a kid, I just felt he's not intimidating enough to always be winning, or never lose. That was enough. If you read his book, he talks about, and I know wrestler books are always embellished like to the moon, but he talks about never being pinned, and of course that's not true. He was pinned, but what was I saying? I just I couldn't understand how he was so dominating in wrestling, and his matches are terrible. I mean, yes, Roddy Piper had a good match with Bret Hart, like SummerSlam, or whatever. This is beyond the 80s. I don't remember a good Roddy Piper match. Jimmy Snuka versus Roddy Piper was great because Snuka was beating the heck out of him and so angry and so animal violent, and Piper would just run and get in a cheap eye poke here and there. I don't remember. I've never seen a good Roddy Piper match. And his ranting, screaming promos drove me nuts. I don't like Roddy Piper. What do you think of that? All right, this guy... This guy's kind of self-explanatory. He came a little bit later, 87 or so, 88 maybe. I think 87. But I was still pretty deep in the play of LJNs at that point. Outback Jack came into the WWF when they were doing those silly vignettes where he was, swimming in the swamps of Australia or whatever. And it took like 4 or 5 weeks for him to debut. Each week you saw one of these vignettes telling you that Outback Jack was coming. And when he got to the WWF, it was just such an underwhelming debut that, then they make a figure of him, which was surprising. And I had no use for Outback Jack. I'm sure when I first got him, in fact, the next two guys came around the same time as Outback Jack. I remember getting all of them at the same time, in fact, from Toys R Us on clearance. Like $4.99 each, I remember getting these guys. But I really had no use for Outback Jack. Had no idea what to do with him. Now, if he didn't have such a goofy smile, today I could kind of make him into like a... sort of like a... like if you remember the Bushwhackers, before then they were the Sheep Herders, and they were one of the most violent tag teams you've ever seen, right? Always they were these bloody matches in Puerto Rico. They're a really violent tag team. I could kind of see him maybe in PACW taking on this sort of violent Australian, I don't know, maybe, but back then Outback Jack just sat in the box and watch the action from the dressing room. Again, same day, picked up all 3 of these figures from Toys R Us clearance. I was super excited. You know, it'd been a while since I'd seen, you know, new figures. And they're good figures. One of them is. Another one I think is junk. Billy Jack Haynes. This is the figure that I think is decent. It's a good-looking figure. Great accessory with the hat. And this is really a perfect hat for him. And this is exactly how the hat was. It was this flat-brimmed, you know, this is a good figure. I have no idea what to do with Billy Jack Haynes. He was a mid-carder at best, you know, low mid-carder. In fact, there were some like Superstars of Wrestling tapings where he would team with a jobber and just get beat by like the Hart Foundation or Sheik and Volkov or something, and he was on the jobber team. Obviously, the jobber would take the pin, but you know, they're putting Billy Jack Haynes in these squash matches with tag teams. So eventually, he just kind of faded out. Perfect figure for play. I mean, it's a great looking figure. There's no reason why I wouldn't have used this figure appearance wise, but I just couldn't figure out what to do with Billy Jack Haynes. He got little to no action in my federation. And the action that he did get, he was teaming with this guy who also got little to no action. And to me, this figure is just a big hunk of junk. Ken Patera, terrible play pose as far as I'm considered. I don't like the double fist play pose. I think that's a big waste. And for some reason, this figure just looks like an eggplant. And not an eggplant that, you know, us modern texter people know, you know, not the emoji eggplant, but for some reason they painted Ken Patera this weird high blood pressure, purpley color, skin tone. And then the purple singlet, of course, doesn't help the skin tone. Yeah, and I don't know what they're thinking with the WWF logo right there in the center of his singlet. That literally never happened. He never ever had a WWF logo on his singlet or doublet or whatever it's called. I don't know. Terrible figure, in my opinion. Never used. When he was used, he would team up with Billy Jack Haynes. They had a short little tag team run in WWF, very short, in '87. But Ken Patera got little to no play in my federation. I never turned him bad. He might have made a better bad guy than a good guy, but never, ever, never Ken Patera, the giant eggplant. Finally, and this guy, I can't say he got no play time. He did get some, but very limited. Adrian Adonis, the adorable Adrian Adonis. Now, in my opinion, best pose for what they're going for, right? We get what they're going for with Adrian. Worst pose ever for a figure. Great pose for what they're trying to accomplish. Worst pose for a figure. I mean, what are you going to do with this? And another thing that I can't stand about this figure, it's so look at the legs. Look at how his legs curve off. It is such a unstable figure. Horrible pose. Great looking figure. Got the body pretty good. He was you know, a little thicker than this. The face is okay, but this play pose is terrible. And I couldn't do anything with him. If he was wrestling for me, it was with like against Junkyard Dog. Other than that, Adrian Adonis got nothing. Now, it would have been fantastic if they had made a non-adorable Adrian Adonis figure. If they had made a 2-pack with Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis, those two would be amazing. But and I assume they'd give him a different play pose. No good. Not using Adrian Adonis. Adrian Adonis never got any time in my federation. Not going to work. So that's that. That is that. That is the bottom 9. The least played with figures of all time in the old WWF LJN Federation of mine many, 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 many years ago. Like I said, much more to come. The shelf by shelf room tour is coming. I'd like to get those out. I'd like to start getting those out this week. And, that just about wraps that up. So bottom 9 is done. Top 10 we have already enjoyed. And, until next time, until we start the room tour, I will see you guys all pretty soon. Soon enough. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. PACW will see the light of day someday, I promise. And room tour's coming up next. Check it out. Look for me real soon. I also just hit the payout mark on YouTube, right? So it took since the channel split, right? From the old, thing that I was doing with the other guy that I can't talk about. Since that time, since I hit the 1,000 subs, I started getting paid for these. And I think it's been about, 5 months or so, 6 months, and I have made it past the $100 threshold. So I've made $100, guys. You guys have gotten me $100 in 5 months. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to withdraw that $100, and I'm going to go shopping, of course, and I'm going to get something for the room. So I'll take you with me on that. You can see how I turn my YouTube fortune into yet another collectible for the room. We'll do that in the next week or two. We're going to be hitting up an old 80s vintage toy shop in town. That's coming up soon. Don't go anywhere. I'll see you next time. Good night now.